So early bloomers of Florida. Okay. So I'm probably preaching to the choir here, and I will admit I'm probably one of the more novice people. So take it with a grain of salt if I
okay.
Anyway, so basically most flowers start blooming around March, but you will notice in Florida there are certain ones that they start mid-winter depending on the season. I know if we have mild winters, they'll bloom even earlier. So not only are they nice for the garden, but they are also helpful. They kickstart the pollination. They can help your garden get fuller for those plants that require that pollination. Yeah, and it helps them learn to love your garden if you get these early bloomers. So here's just a few, and this is kind of a random list. I kind of picked everybody's brain at the last meeting and just wrote down what came up. So we've got the Carolina crossbill. I didn't even know about this one. It does actually start in the winter and goes into the spring for blooming. It's technically considered a weed, I guess, in some places. But some cool facts, it was used to treat sore throats and diarrhea. I love those fun facts. It is Florida's only native geranium. Because of its weedy reputation, it is generally not propagated by commercial growers. It's easily transplanted and requires little maintenance. It does readily reseed though, so watch out if you want a pristine lawn. You're probably not going to get it if you put that in there. And it can be mowed and removed by hand. Yeah, so that one, and it grows in our area, 8A to 10B, full sun, part shade. Another one, this one is my favorite. This is the, I call it the blue spiderwort, but apparently it's called the Ohio spiderwort. And this is a very, very adaptable plant. I can put it pretty much anywhere. In fact, I had it in my yard. I thought basically it was gonna die. It was under shade behind some stuff. And it lasted through the whole last season. So they have beautiful showy flowers. The bees go crazy over these guys. They do spread quickly and easily. I had a big patch of them in my garden and decided to rearrange it. And this season already, I have a whole bunch of spiderworts that decided to regrow where that patch was cleared. So they seed quickly, easily. You can get them at native nurseries, full sun, part shade. Like I said, they grow in every condition in my yard personally. Oh, and a fun fact: they were named after John Tredescant. Thank you. I butcher names. And he was the gardener to the King Charles I of England. So my brain associates the King Charles Cavalier with spiderworts because of that. Anyway, another one, the Southern Blue Flag Iris came up. And let's see if I can get this. I don't know if you guys can see everything. Okay. It kind of reminds me of the spiderwort, but it's a lot bigger, 3 to 4 feet instead of that 1 to 2. And this one definitely needs the moist soil. So the spiderwort can handle a lot, for example, but this one does need that moist soil. I think I'm not too familiar with this one personally. I'm coming from Palm Beach County, but I see here the zones are a little bit more north. It's a 8A to 9B. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, is this the one you see like by the roadsides growing in the ditches?
Yes.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to just create a wet spot in my yard for these guys, but not quite there. Pollinated by bumblebees, and I think the picture up here is a long-horned bee. I thought that was cool. And butterflies do visit them, but they're not really effective at pollinating. Some fun facts. Oh, then this one, the lyre leaf sage. I had one of them visit my yard. I think it's a hitchhiker from the native nursery in one of my old pots. It's a pretty flower. Grows pretty short, 1 to 1.5 feet. And I noticed the leaves right away. They were very distinct. It was growing right next to my blueberry bush. And I was like, this is not a blueberry plant. What is this? So I ended up looking it up. Some fun facts. It can be mixed with grasses. I did not know this. You can actually mow it. And I think this picture here in the middle is a good example. I think this is a side of a roadside that had been cleared. And then this beautiful, rich patch of lyre-leaf sage growing in there. You can get it at native nurseries. Like I said, I had a hitchhiker from one of my pots from the native nursery. Fun facts, young leaves can sometimes be used in salads. You can steam them, you can boil them, you can make tea out of them. They apparently taste minty. Some people use them for medicine. The Florida Native Plant Society has not validated these statements. What you eat and drink is your own responsibility. What else? Yeah, and apparently, if you look at, I copied a picture of a lyre. The purple in them at times can look like a lyre. So that's where the name came from. We've got the swamp leather flower. This one was hard to get pictures of in full. So yeah, it grows up to 4 feet. It's a vine. This one, apparently, I've not experienced them personally. So it has a aroma, fragrance, showy flower. It does remain attractive, but you have to apparently cut it back a little bit, keep it rejuvenated that way. You can get it at native nurseries. I checked it out. It's available. And I feel like I'm promoting native nurseries right now. It's just my knee-jerk reaction, nothing. Anyway, this one needs to be usually moist. I did see pictures of it near water, but not, and it can't get dry. Hummingbirds like it. And this mournful thyrus, I found a picture of this spotted black, actually it doesn't say, is this a moth or is this a butterfly? Does anybody know?
It's like a moth to me.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I have to figure out that new fun fact. It does grow a little bit north to about where we are, and it's poisonous to humans. Probably why I don't know much about it. It's not from, it doesn't go south of Palm Beach County. Eastern Redbud. Another one. You guys have so many cool things here, by the way. I'm excited. Okay, so Eastern Redbud, I've started seeing these in people's yards. It's clearly an early bloomer. I noticed it in one of my neighbor's yards. Apparently to the south of its range, it doesn't really bloom as well. So it does go to 9B, but I have seen really nice examples right down the street with this one. It is kind of weak and brittle. So they say, if you're gonna have it, just know that hurricanes, they might blow it over, or you can put it with some other things to kind of secure it. Let's see. Yep, it needs moist to short dry periods. It's the larval host plant for Henry's elfin. And that would be this guy down here, the brown one, and the OI moth, this guy up here with the 2 dots.
Hey, Erin.
Did I do it wrong?
No.
Oh, okay.
Oh, this is great, but I think we're going to have to bring the rest of your plants to the next meeting, if you wouldn't mind, because
Oh, sure.
Jono has been waiting. I told him that he was going to have to wait about 5 minutes. So
Okay.
but we're going to get the Jono started. All right. So thank you so much. Thank
No
you.
worries. Okay. No problem.
Okay. All right, Jono. All right. So Jono and Julie are so well known and loved by us. They are founding members of our chapter. And Jono's led a lot of field trips. I can remember the last one at Myakka River State Park, looking at Sabal Palms. I have photos. He is a educator, activist, and natural historian, a graduate of New College, where he was co-director of the environmental program for many years. And really, without further ado, let's just bring him on to talk about his wonderful new book. Unmute yourself.
Thank you, Fran. Okay, well, it's great to see all of you. I know some of you, but a lot of people I haven't had the pleasure of meeting, so it's great to see this crowd. I'm going to do a number of things. I'm going to introduce you to the book I've just written, introduce you to myself a little bit. I have a current event related to Cabbage Palms that I want to share with you. I will be taking questions, but I also have some images of some interesting cabbage palms in Sarasota County. I'm sorry, I don't have that much from Manatee, Hardy, or DeSoto. And then if we have time, there's some chapters that deal specifically with Sarasota, and I thought I'd read some excerpts from those. So last time I did this, I found out some people have their books and sort of like to read along. So I'm going to start on page 1 in the introduction at the bottom of the page. And obviously this is an introduction. So, as with an obscure relative we've never met, we frequently know just one lingering hallmark story about a tree. Natives would pound the bark and put it in streams to kill fish. The wood is so heavy it sinks. It was deliberately introduced and then escaped cultivation and is now a big problem. And if you go on a nature walk with a naturalist, you will likely be told 1 or 2 or 3 of these factoids about the plants the naturalist recognizes. Too many nature walks are an outdoor reception line, an introductory handshake followed by some pleasantries, speed dating the environment. As a result, most of what we know about a given tree species is typically a bouquet of aphorisms that reduce a complex plant to just a few memorable talking points. And then I'm going to go to page 7, also in the introduction, the first paragraph. This book is a plant biography of sorts, not an ecological monograph, but a collection of essays exploring the personality and contributions of one common tree, various aspects of what is known and unknown about it, and how it interacts both with humans and the rest of the environment. This book may end up shelved with the commodity histories, John McPhee's oranges or Kalansky's cod, but it deals even-handedly with cabbage palms as non-commodities, what wildlife they support, how long they live, etc. It could be considered a natural history, but it is equal parts cultural history. There's some personal narrative, but it is not a memoir. And there are facts, but it is not academic. It's a peregrinating ramble about a plant you didn't necessarily think you wanted to know more about, but do. It's a demonstration of how the commonplace and ordinary can be seen upon examination to be extraordinary. While you are welcome to sample the chapters randomly, they're grouped into 3 topical sections: botany, ecology, and culture, although the boundaries are not rigid. Welcome to the complicated world of the cabbage palm or palmetto. So that's an introduction to the book. For those of you who don't know me, I'd like to introduce you to myself and sort of how I got started on this whole thing. So let's go up here and play. So I don't know how many of you were into the Golden Nature Guides, but these things were key. And this is my copy of Trees. And I should have put Herbert Zim in my acknowledgements. Here's my tree book from 2nd grade. So I was probably about 7 years old when I was reading this. And here on page 128 is the cabbage palm. This is probably the first cabbage palm I'd ever seen.
Your screen is frozen.
What?
We're only seeing article and photos by Jono Miller. So
Okay.
my suggestion is stop sharing and then start again and see if it works.
Okay.
I
Share
had this
screen.
issue the other night on a Zoom with Sarasota Audubon. It was working fine and then it stopped.
Let's try this one.
That's, yeah.
That better?
Yep, that's better.
Okay. So here's my first cabbage palm, and I love it. It says they are related more to lilies, bananas, bamboo, and grasses than to ordinary trees. So even at age 7, I knew that this was no ordinary tree. So let's fast forward to 1982, after Julie and I graduated from New College, and I had been commissioned to do a drawing, and I went to Myakka Park. This is at the lower lake, and I drew this sort of panorama of cabbage palms looking out over the marsh at the lower lake. And it was this drawing that really got me intrigued with the arrangement of the leaves on the palm tree. And so 10 years later, I had I did my graduate work at USF at the Florida Studies program. That ended in 2011, and 10 years later, the book arrived. So let me share with you a current event. This has to do with St. Augustine Beach. And it deals with a story, a gentleman I got to know. He was very concerned about over pruning of cabbage palms, and he noticed that the city of St. Augustine Beach was over pruning their cabbage palms. And so he was very smart and strategic. And he went and got ahead of where the pruning was taking place and took a series of photographs that were before and after photos. And then he went to the press. He went to his local TV station and got them interested. And they did this story about, is the trimming of the palm trees necessary? And so here's a pair of his trees before and after. And you can see it's almost perfect registration, the before shot and the after shot. And so I took the work that he had done and did a blog posting. This is the header of my blog, and so the blog is palmettobook.blog. And so what I did is I outlined the canopy of the tree before it was pruned, and then I did a fairly simple animation showing what had happened in the meantime, how much of the tree had been removed. And so I posted this as a blog, and when I checked before, before we started, over 400 people have read this blog, and people as far away as South Carolina have been looking at it. And so I think it's really touched a nerve. People are really concerned about over pruning of palms, and that is what I wanted to cover. And what I'd like to do now is to stop for a little while and take questions people may have about either, I need to escape again here. So where are we? Okay, yes, take questions if people have questions, either about the book and the book process or about cabbage palms themselves.
Feel free to turn on your video and unmute yourself, or if you prefer to raise your hand, I will see it in the list.
Oh, I have a question, Karen, that I have or Jono, I read about this in your book actually and figured out what was wrong with my palmetto. It's got the weevil, where the center is bending.
Okay.
And from what I understand, it's not necessarily, the weevil is not necessarily going to jump to every other palm in my yard. Is that what you found?
I think that's true. The weevils are, the weevils really like to take advantage of when a tree is weak. So they're most prevalent after a tree's been transplanted or if it's been wounded in some way. But on a healthy palm, I wouldn't expect, if your other palms are healthy and established, I wouldn't necessarily expect a problem. You can create, they do a bait station, and you could look this up, but I believe they use like banana peels or bananas, and the weevils will be attracted to that pheromone as well. Well, it may not technically be a pheromone, but they're attracted to that. You can trap them that way.
Okay.
That would be one suggestion.
And do I need to cut the whole palm down, or can I just cut the top off? It's in a break in my fence, so I kind of want to save its trunk if I can.
Well, with the treatment we always recommend for queen palms is just to cut the top out and let woodpeckers nest in them. So if you
Yeah,
can,
okay, good. That's
if
what
you
I'll
can
do.
leave the tree, great. And if you
Yeah.
need, yeah.
I want it. And I figure maybe someday I'll get somebody to make a face in it or something.
Now,
when
they
it's starting
will,
to fall apart.
they will stand for many years, but I need to let you know that a couple of years ago, a young woman was on Egmont Key and tied her hammock to a dead cabbage palm, and the palm fell over and killed her. So,
Oh my gosh. Well, yeah, I won't do that. I use a hammock stand, so we're
yeah,
safe
all
from
right.
that danger.
So
But I
only tie
appreciate
your
the
hammock
warning.
to live trees. That's my
That's
big
terrible.
tip.
Yeah. Oh, that's terrible. Thank
Yeah.
you. I
Yeah.
love the book, by the way.
Oh,
Thank you.
thank you. Other questions?
Okay, Mary Price here. I enjoyed the book too. I've read at least half of it. And raised some questions for me because I have about, on my property, I have 13 palms, and of those nine I believe are the cabbage. And one of the places you were talking about, because of the over trimming, and I, without even knowing this, I had to insist with my tree people never to do it, always to do it at least 3 to 9 o'clock. And I didn't even know that term, but I just
Right.
knew that I didn't want that, what do they call it, the asparagus look,
Feather duster, yeah.
which the professional building behind me just did to theirs. But my question has to do with in your book, you're talking about the yellow, I'll call them leaves because it's fawns, give potassium, so you don't want to take those off. And that led to me to think about, are there actually nutrition, is there nutrition treatments or something that, because I'm sure my trees have been here for at least 25 years. This house has been in the family since 1950s. So mine are probably pretty old, the palm trees, but I'm wondering if they need some nutrition, and is there a place we go to do that other than just leaving yellow limbs
Well,
on?
I guess I'd recommend, although I don't always recommend IFAS, I think I'd recommend IFAS for that. What I've read is that virtually every palm tree in the state of Florida is deficient in potassium. And beyond that, it's hard, even if you add potassium to the soil, it doesn't always get taken up. So they're sort of all cruising on not enough potassium. You could try putting ashes around, but I guess I would defer to IFAS on what the best fertilization would be for palms.
Okay. And do you think there's a time of year where we should be watering them? The reason I raise that is because I'm noticing at the base of a couple of the palms, I can literally, I was sitting there yesterday reading your book, and I looked over and I hadn't noticed, but you could actually see the little tentacles of, you were talking about like the pencil, like the roots are about a pencil size.
Mhm.
And I think what's happened, some of the soil has eroded at where it's particularly at, because I was sitting under the shade. And I don't know if I should replenish some soil or sand or something, or water it more, or
Personally, I wouldn't worry about it. There may be a few roots at the surface, but obviously the vast majority are underground. One of the experiments I want to do is dendrochronologists will strap a metal band around a tree and tighten it with precision. And then as the band expands, they can see how much the tree grows in a given length of time. And my own suspicion is that in a drought, the cabbage palm is actually a little smaller in diameter. And when it rains a lot, they probably get better hydrated. But for an established tree that's been there for a number of years, they should be able to handle any drought as well or better than other trees. Let me go ahead and show you some local cabbage palms, and let's see if I can. So I think this is the one that worked. Oh, so I wanted to explain, one of the reasons people can prune the palms so severely and have them recover is because that's what they do in nature. This is a photograph from Egmont Key after a fire. And you can see that the green fronds on these palms basically replicate the exact number of green fronds that were on the over-pruned trees. So in order for the cabbage palm to survive, it has to be able to recover from having virtually, 85 to 90% of its fronds killed. And so pruners, landscape people take advantage of that fact, but it's clearly stressful for the plant. And if they had a choice, they probably wouldn't go through a fire, and they probably don't appreciate being pruned. So let me show you some local ones. This one I'm going to have to terminate early because it's gets a little hard to watch, but this is down at the Eagle Point Club, and they have, this is a clump of palms that have multiple trunks. This is at the entrance. So there's 2 trunks there. This one has 3 trunks coming from, 3 heads coming from 1 trunk. It's very rare, and I've been told that came from up in Manatee County. This is on South Orange. These I call the Watras palms, and these 4 palms in a row that all lean in this peculiar direction. Now when you travel Orange Avenue, you'll notice this if you haven't previously. This tree is no longer there. This was on an alley between Main and First Street in downtown Sarasota, and the tree was growing out of this concrete collar that had been placed around to protect a phone pole from the traffic on the alley. And people look at this and go, well, that can't possibly be that the tree grew through that. And then I show them this picture from New Orleans. This was outside a bar in New Orleans. It's subsequently, this tree has died, and it now looks like this. The tree is still there, but it's not living. But people don't understand, again, how could a tree that size come from such a small container? There must be a hole in the bottom or something. So then I show people, this is a picture of a regenerated cabbage palm from Florida Association of Native Nurseries show. And you can see the size of the black plastic that this tree is growing out of. And here's one that's upside down. And so it's possible to have a really decent sized palm tree growing out of a fairly small container. This is apparently a very healthy, normal cabbage palm, and yet it's in the grips of a gigantic strangler fig. This is out at the Wells Fargo Bank on St. Armand's. If you go around the corner from Big Olaf ice cream, you'll see this tree, and the palm doesn't care. It's doing fine. And I wrote about this. If you've read your latest issue of Palmetto, I have an article in there about strangler figs. And this is material that wasn't included in the book. This is the famous strangler pine tree on Camino Real in Sarasota. And if you look, you can see what must have happened is a pine seedling germinated in a boot jack at the base near the bottom of the palm tree and made its roots to the ground. And eventually all the boot jacks eroded away. And so now we have this pine tree that's hugging the palm. And then probably the most famous palms, at least from my perspective, are the Palm Avenue 26 in downtown Sarasota. This is what they looked like. And Sarasota City decided they were going to cut all these trees down and send them to the landfill. They wanted to put in a new spiffy landscape. And part of the rationale was that these trees had only been there since 1984. And they weren't really planted in a geometric pattern. They were just kind of randomly planted there. And so it's best to get rid of them. So we did a little research and found out that the 6 or 7 trees that were planted most close to the building had actually been planted there in 1911. It turns out those 6 cabbage palms are the oldest remnant surviving landscape trees in downtown Sarasota. And this is a picture from October 13th of 1920. And you can see the palms here. And the Women's Club is over here. And John Ringling Towers is being built in the distance. And you can see, I don't know if these are, I don't know my Model A's from my Model T's, but these are obviously pretty old cars. So these palms are here. They were historic and nobody recognized it. And so we started a campaign, and I had a lot of help from Dave Fiegels and other local Native Plant Society members, and we were able to convince the city commission to keep the trees, even though they wanted to put pavers in around them. And I was down there a few weeks ago, and they finally decided to put lights in them at night. And it's just a really magical, neat place. And so I'm very appreciative to the Native Plant Society for helping out. I'm going to go ahead and read a little from some of the chapters that deal specifically with situations in Sarasota. So I'm going to start on page 72, where it says brown notes. Brown notes, there are two types of variegated palms: a striated variant with yellow stripes running along the leaf segments, apparently more common on the East Coast, and individuals with bold patches of glowing paleness at the costa where the segments originate. These are the types seen in the Sarasota-Bradenton area. It's probably safe to say that several dozen of these sunburst palms have been found in the Myakka and Braden River watersheds, but they don't always fare well. First, since many of the sightings are through windshields, these examples fall victim to road widening and development. Those that survive progress are at risk from naive collectors unaware of the challenges of relocating young cabbage palms. A young one in Myakka River State Park was nearly killed by mowing the shoulder along the park drive. In addition, I've been told that some anxious or uninformed landscapers conclude the yellowed palms are diseased and dispatch them. And since they don't have as much photosynthetic surface as a normal palm, they may be a little less vigorous. In 2007, the Selby Botanical Gardens acquired one with some fanfare. A newspaper article suggested it might be worth $20,000, but it did not survive. I spotted one growing along Highway 72 in Sarasota County, and I was told the discoloration was likely the result of herbicide spraying or disease, but it persisted for years, and when road widening seemed imminent, I persuaded the county government to locate it to the eastern terminus of Valencia Road in Venice. This is the plaque that goes with it. And this is a photo of the part of the tree. The most dramatic examples may be viewed on 17th Street in Sarasota. Owned by Ace Holland, these three palms and now a bevy of offspring are irrefutably variegated. And Ace has started collecting seed for a grower from this operation for sale online for $500. Oh, I've seen seedlings from this operation on sale for $500. As more palm promoters germinate seeds from reproducing variegated palms, the price of seedlings should decline. So this is Ace's place on 17th, and these are crazy palms. Now, I included this for people in South County. This is in Venice, and this is a variegated palm that's in the South County Administration Building parking lot. So then I'm going to read from page 83, starting with even. Oh, and I wanted to mention this one. This is the one that was growing alongside the road in Myakka Park, and I said it almost had been lost. Well, since I wrote the book, they came along and mowed it down again. I don't know if it's going to come back. It may have been too severely wounded, so we'll have to wait and see. Anyway, back to page 83. Even with its waterward root mass gone, the cabbage palm hangs on and appears to levitate above the river, held from collapsing by long tension cables, which are the roots, extending dozens of feet deep in the riverbank. These slowly falling palms are iconic and typify rivers such as the Myakka. During higher water flow, these parallel trunks can be just a foot or two above the surface of the water, creating sweepers that threaten to allow canoes or kayaks underneath while scraping off the protruding paddlers. In flood stage, these parallel palms can become submerged, and the force of the water can push the trunk down until it rebounds and springs back up, creating an eerie rhythmic bobbing action known to paddlers as sawyers, apparently reminiscent of the tiller which is the upper man's motions in early pit saws. And it's really quite sensational to be canoeing down the river and none of the other trees are moving and this thing's bobbing up and down. Winslow Homer's paintings captured both leaning and horizontal palms in Florida. So here's one of the horizontal ones. And then from chapter 12, I think page one, well, let's see, where are we? 131. I'll start in 131 elsewhere. Oh, I'm sorry. There's some more stuff I wanted to show you. So let me backtrack. I apologize. This is going to be, no, I'll have to find it. I'll just talk through it. So this is one of the things that happens with these oddball palms is sometimes a palm will fall and it'll fall in the crotch of another tree and the tree will actually support it. So here's a case where a palm fell in a laurel oak and the oak is holding the palm up. And then this is the most dramatic example that we've run across. Chip Roach, who lives here in Sarasota, discovered this tree in Mayac River State Park. And so it starts out on this slant, and there are a lot of slanting fallen cabbage palms, so that's not so unusual by itself. It goes along gaining in elevation, and then all of a sudden it encounters a laurel oak, and the oak has subsequently grown around the tree. So now the palm goes in one side of the laurel oak and comes out the other side. It goes along straight for a while, then it takes a dip downward. And then comes back around and has a completely healthy head. So I've never seen anything quite like that, and I wanted to share it with you. That's a Mayaca Park specialty. So again, this is, now I'm going to read from page 131. Sorry for that detour. And this has to do with John Thaxton and Cabbage Palms and Scrub Jays and Oscar Shearer. Elsewhere in Cabbage Palm poor locales, the scrub jays have other strategies, other fixes. Scrub jays on Florida's Central Ridge use comparable fibers from a closely related palm species, Sabal. And the jays, fortunate enough to still have viable habitat near beaches, use fine root fibers which are exposed as dunes erode. But here in the scrubby flatwoods of Oscar Shearer, monkey hair, which is what some people call these fibers, is the only known nest lining material and is apparently so crucial to nest building that the nesting pair will leave their home territory, a big deal in the world of scrub jays, to collect the fibers elsewhere. The problem with leaving the territory is that they usually have to cross another jay's family territory, subjecting themselves to a gauntlet of harassment from the neighboring jays. If they choose to fly higher, gaining altitude to avoid their neighbors, then they risk attack from either sharp-shinned or Cooper's hawks. Yet they risk these challenges repeatedly to seek out these must-have fibers. They achieve some efficiency by collecting 3 to 5 fibers at a time, and having gathered them, they frequently perch with the fibers between their claws and pull them through their beaks. No one knows if this is to clean them, soften them, test their tensile strength, or what. But once they're done, they head back to the nest site. The first nest of the spring can take 2 weeks to build and involve a lot of fibers. How many fibers do they need for one nest? I naively decided I was willing to conduct some basic palm utilization research. So I asked John Thaxton if he could secure a used scrub jay nest for me. Since the jays don't reuse nests, he couldn't see how it would create a problem for the birds if he recycled one. After a season or two, I obtained an abandoned nest from Nancy Edmondson, who managed the Minnesota Scrub Preserve for Sarasota County. So here's the nest. And you can see the outer armature of the twigs, and they snap all these twigs off of the oaks. They don't pick twigs up off the ground. They harvest all the twigs, but you've dealt with oaks, you know, they're really wiry and spiky. So they create this softer inner lining of palm fibers. And I calculated that it was over 500 fibers in this one nest. So it's a tremendous effort for these birds to undertake. And then the final thing I'll read to you, and then I'll take more questions, is from page 226. The densest known concentration of existing palm log edifices is in Mayaca River State Park. where 8 palm log structures built by the Civilian Conservation Corps between 1935 and 1941 not only still exist, but remain in active use. Not only is this the public's best opportunity to see palm log construction, you can even stay in one of the 5 cabins. After 80 years of use and abuse from hatchet-wielding vandals, the park restored most of the palm structures by elevating them and replacing bad logs. Annual flooding had compromised some of the lower logs, as had drips from air conditioners. Nearly 400 replacement palm logs were harvested in the park from a designated 100-acre plot. They were dried for 3 months and then cut to fit the live oak framing. The park's logs run horizontally and they alternated orientations so that the slightly smaller diameter top end of one log rested on the slightly wider bottom end of the previous log. In keeping with the historic construction, they were wired to the frame with number 5 copper wire and chinked with a mixture of tar and sawdust. Project superintendent Jeff Conkey of DEC Contracting Group told me his firm had never worked with palm log construction before, but that it had been fairly straightforward 8-month project. His main tips were to let the logs dry, keep them off the ground on a flat surface. He said when fresh and wet, they will assume the shape of whatever they're stored on, and to wear gloves. So here's what they look like after they've been elevated and refurbished. And this is, I think, built as the assistant park manager's dwelling. And you can see the copper wire and some of the tar material that's put in between the logs. So let me stop sharing and field a few more questions.
All right, Robin has a question.
Hi,
Robin is Karen's daughter.
hello. So I was just wondering, I know you talked about how the cabbage palms could fit in the really small spaces.
Mhm.
How exactly are they able to live in those conditions?
That is a great question. I don't have a great answer. So there are 2 different things going on. You'll see places where a palm will be coming up out of the sidewalk with concrete right up next to it. And in those cases, the roots are still going out. They could be going out 40 or 50 feet under the sidewalk and under the street. So that makes some sense. But that picture I showed from inside the auditorium of the regenerated palm, that's a little harder to understand. Now, what's going on is that palm didn't grow that way. The way that works is the people that are creating these palms to transplant got into a pasture on a ranch somewhere. And so a palm tree will be growing, and again, it might have roots that extend out 40 feet in either direction. And they will cut those roots. And when you cut the root of a cabbage palm, that root is going to die. It's going to have to grow a completely new root. Other palm species will sometimes fork and the one root will start growing again, but that doesn't really happen with cabbage palms. So you don't really need a very big root ball on a cabbage palm because all those roots are dead and it's going to have to grow new roots. So what they do is they take that tree back and they wrap the root ball in plastic and they keep it moist, and they, for all I know, I'll have to check, but for all I know, they probably give it some nutrition as well. So now it's contained in this plastic container, and it's being given water, and it may be given nutrients. And so the tree didn't grow from a seed in this little thing. It grew naturally, and now it's been compressed. And so the secret to these regenerated palms is that the new root system starts to grow and fill and expand this black plastic. And I don't know how long they can leave them in that before they have to relocate them. But as you saw from the example in New Orleans, somehow they can live in a pretty small space, but obviously they would need water and they would need some basic nutrients, but it's still, I'm with you, it's somewhat of a mystery.
Thank you.
Welcome. Well, Tom has a question.
Yeah.
What do I think causes the 2 or 3 headed tops? Well, that's one theory was that it was cold weather, but that doesn't seem to make any sense, because when you go up into South Carolina or even North Carolina, they're not all two-headed. So, but it's clear that something damages the bud in such a way that's not fatal, but causes it to diverge. And I ran into a guy online probably 10 years ago, and he was actually going around with an axe and whacking cabbage palm buds, trying to see if he could get to create two-headed ones. And I relate in the book the story of a palm nursery on Pine Island that claimed they were producing two-headed palms, but when we got down there and asked them, it didn't seem like they were. So there's not a good explanation as to what causes it. They're valuable, and because cabbage palms are so easy to transplant, typically whenever they're discovered in the wild, people dig them up and move them, to where they can be seen in a botanic garden or somebody's collection. Other questions?
Are we allowed to ask questions about other Florida native palms?
You can
Or is
try. You
Well,
can try. Go ahead.
I have the thatch palm,
Yeah.
potted.
Uh-huh.
Is it safe to say it's good in a pot for a good while? If they're babies, any advice on care for potted palm?
My experiences with cabbage palms, not thatch palms. With cabbage palms, they will actually blow out the side of a pot. Their roots will just become this seething mass that expands and bursts the pot. So if they're to the extent they're like that, you'll know when it's been in the pot too long. But it can actually be hard to get those pots off. So if you're thinking of putting it in the ground, probably sooner rather than later would be good.
Got it.
Mary Price here. I'll ask another question if no one else is.
Let me ask this one, answer the one. So the photo of the burned cabbages over the sand. So there was a bad fire on Egmont Key. And after the fire, there was a storm. What a coincidence. After the fire, there was a storm that washed sand up into the palm forest. So when Julie and I got there, you had these stark black charred trunks with pure white sand that looked like snow underneath. And it was a very dramatic time. I'm sure we go back there now, it's, going to be Biden's and Virginia creeper and smilax and all sorts of stuff. But after the fire, it was very dramatic. Yes, what was the next question?
I have a question.
Yes, Kathy.
Is this the palm from which the palms that were given out in churches on Palm Sunday are derived?
Yes, and yes and no. So so for instance, the people that that are named Palmer as their last name, that apparently is the Palmers got their last name from people that came back from the Crusades, and sort of one of the only ways they could prove that they'd been in the Middle East was to come back with a palm frond. And so those would have been date palms, they would have been pinnate leaves. So a lot of the leaves that are used in religious services are pinnate. They also use saw palmetto leaves, but they also apparently, there's a firm, and I forget what city in Florida, but there is a firm that collects palm fronds prior to Palm Sunday and ships out cases of them. And I've always thought it would be interesting to go up and just join their crew for the week before Palm Sunday and get a feel for how that is. So what I would say about that is sometimes cabbage palms are used, sometimes saw palmettos are used, and probably more frequently, if they can get them, the feathery type fronds are used because they're more evocative of the palms that would have been mentioned in the Bible.
Is the monkey hair only characteristic of the cabbage palm? Because those fronds did have monkey hair.
Yes. So I'm not sure how to answer this. The young cabbage palm leaves typically don't have monkey hair. Mature cabbage palm leaves may not have monkey hair if birds have been pilfering all the fibers for their nests. But one of the easiest way, if you're trying to learn to tell a young saw palmetto from a young cabbage palm, is that saw palmettos never have those filaments in between the leaf segments. So there are other species of palms that have even more hairs. The whole leaf segment is sort of fringed. I think some of the Washingtonias may be like that. But yeah, if you see a palm in Sarasota and it has filaments in between the leaf segments, the odds are fair it's a cabbage palm.
I have a question about your book.
Yes.
Because you mentioned, it's a lot of things about, pollination and the birds and the bees and the wasps and even the raccoon getting up in the tree. And I have a raccoon that kind of circles my house at night because I've seen her, whatever. But I'm just curious, they actually climb the trunk and get up in the leaves?
Yes, and if you get out to Mayaca or anywhere where there are burned cabbage palms that are charred, if you look, you'll just see numerous claw marks, and you can see squirrel claws because they're teeny squirrel-sized scratches in the char, and then you'll see raccoon-sized scratches. And when Julie and I were down in the Picayune Strand, we found bear claw scratches in the char. So bears will climb up. There's a picture in the book of a bear that climbed up in a cabbage palm either to take a nap or eat the heart or eat berries. And I didn't include it in the book. I ran into a gentleman and he said that he had a cousin who had gone out in the woods and there was a cabbage palm, and next to the cabbage palm was a dead pine tree that was weathered to just being a snag. And then on either side of the dead pine tree was a bear skeleton. And he said his relative told him that what must have happened was that the bear climbed up in the palm to eat the heart or to take a nap, and then fallen out and fallen in a way that he ended up impaled on this pine snag and died, and that accounted for the skeleton. And I said, well, that sounds really far-fetched. I mean, I'm having a hard time believing that one. And he said, well, if you knew my cousin, I don't think he was bright enough to come up with that on his own if it wasn't true. So you never know. I always like that story, though.
We talk about the honey. Are they going after the honey? I wasn't quite sure where the honey is in the
Well, so the
palm.
flowers are really, really small, and there can be 1 million flowers on one tree. I say the flowers could hide behind a lentil. So you may smell them and you may see them, but you have to look up. It's so funny. A lot of us are really interested in pollinators, and we want to put something in our yard that's great for pollinators, but we tend to think of those things as being under waist height. And that's because the oaks are primarily wind pollinated and the pines are wind pollinated. So we don't really think of pollinators in the canopy, but the cabbage palms produce, as I say, millions of flowers. And so there's very little nectar in each flower because of its size, but cumulatively it's a lot. And so when the plants are blooming, it can produce a lot of nectar. And as I write about in the book, there are people that do sell palmetto honey, but most of what we see labeled as palmetto honey is saw palmetto honey. It's much harder to get a relatively pure cabbage palm honey, but they are going after the nectar. Are there any cabbage palms around the state? I'd love an excuse to, well, yes. So I think, where does it appear? I would recommend St. Augustine. It's a great place to visit. And they have at least 5 or 6 examples of these oak trees, these love trees. So the article that's in the Palmetto talks about love trees, which are situations where a cabbage palm is growing out of an oak tree. And in most cases, it appears that the oak tree has grown around the cabbage palm. And so if you want a nice trip, you can drive up to St. Augustine with your copy of Palmetto, and I provide the street addresses for all the locations of the ones we were able to locate. And it's just kind of interesting to bicycle around and look at these strange trees that are growing out of oak trees. So that would be one. I also mentioned in Stuart, Florida, there's a whole park where probably several dozen palms all blew over in what must have been the same event, and now they're all curving and growing upward. So Stuart and St. Augustine would be two I would recommend. Oh, what's the best way to tell Sabal Palmetto and Sabal Etonia when young? Oh man, I'm not going to answer that. I don't feel confident enough to be able to tell you. Seems like the fruit are different, and the Sabal Etonia will send out inflorescences when they're. So the Sabal Etonia is going to be trunkless. It's typically trunkless, and so its bloom stalks are going to have to basically come out of the ground. And you're not going to see that with a cabbage palm, but maybe somebody else would like to answer that. I haven't written a book on Sabal Etonia. Let me pull up just a little information if people are trying to contact me. So you can email me Cabbage Palm. Oh, let me do this. I gotta do everything right here. You can email me cabbagepalm@gmail. The blog is palmettobook.blog. There's my phone number. You need to start speaking within 5 or 6 seconds or I'll hang up on you because I get a lot of solicitation calls. And this is what the book looks like. And you need to know what the book looks like in its habitat. So when you go to the bookstore, that's what you're looking for, the Palmetto Book. And yes, feel free to, check out the blog. I have a number of articles about some are current event type things, some are field trips that I've taken, some is material that didn't fit in the book. So we're after 7. I'm willing to answer questions as long as people have them, but I don't want to keep people unnecessarily. So I'll defer to Karen as to when you want to stop this.
Well, everyone's still here.
Okay,
so
well,
you're
let's keep
keeping
going.
us entertained.
Let's keep
Yeah.
going.
I have a question, John.
Yes, Fran.
How are cabbage palms, Sabal palms related at all to the royal palms? I mean,
Not in any discernible, they're
Really?
palms, but no, not very closely. There are like 15 different species of Sabal palms. And after that, I don't know I don't know which palms would be more closely related to Sabals. But, when you think about it, the royal palm is a palmate leaf, and it has that green crown shaft. The base of the leaf wraps around the trunk. And when those, things fall off, they're like 12 feet long or something. They're ridiculous. So no, they're not very closely related.
My daughter used to call them rocket heads.
Huh.
Things that come off the royal palm.
One died at New College and all the leaves fell off. And then so the students glued like 4 fins on the bottom of it and painted it like a rocket. Yeah, I can see that.
All right, any other questions?
Well, this has been wonderful, just terrific.
Barnes and Noble had 2 remaining copies on the shelf. So they told me they were going to get more, or that they didn't have it when I first went in, and I notified them that it existed. They said they would order them more. The ones at Bookstore 1 in downtown Sarasota at the corner of Palm and Main, those are signed copies. Usually, I try to get down there and sign them. I'm a promoter of Bookstore 1 because they hosted a similar Zoom meeting, and Amazon or Books A Million or Barnes and Noble haven't done that. So I'm trying to support independent local booksellers. But yeah, I'm glad Barnes and Noble is stocking it.
One more question, John.
Hey, Tom.
Do you know where maybe the tallest tree in the state? I might have missed. I missed the beginning of your talk, and I haven't finished the book. But do you know where?
I don't talk about that in the book. There was one that was supposed to be 90 feet tall and Seminole Highlands Hammock, and that one died. And I think they just moved the sign over to another tree or something. There's some stories about that. And but there is the champion, I think, is somewhere up around the 89 or 90 foot height, but it's in a private location that's not disclosed. So I've never seen the tallest cabbage palm, but yeah, it's somewhere. I could look it up, but I'll try to get that information next time I see you. I'll give you a number of the champion.
Just curious. Thanks.
Yeah. Well, it's amazing that they can grow that tall. There's a palm in South America, I believe it's a wax palm. These things will get 200 feet tall. 200 feet tall. So that would be like going in a hotel, getting in the elevator, listening to music for 19 floors, opening your room, pulling the curtains aside, and there's a palm canopy opposite you on the 19th floor. That's crazy. They're apparently kind of endangered. They're not reproducing well, or people are cutting them down, or something's happening to them. But a 200-foot tall palm tree is pretty outrageous. And even you'll see around town, some of the Washingtonias we have are ridiculously tall. And my own opinion, and I think Julie shares this, is that some of these Bismarck palms, they start out, they're really cute. They're short and they're silvery and they're very architectural. And then these things just keep growing and growing and growing, and their trunks are getting bigger and bigger. And after a while, they seem like they're looming over you, like they're really dominating. And I don't know, when everyone's cute little Bismarck grows up, they may be a little intimidated by them, because I am.
Like an alligator in the bathtub.
Yes, University Press will ship. Yes, they'll get the book in 2 days.
Yeah, I ordered the book that was right next to it, the new pink Florida book. And I ordered it and it was here in 2 days. So I would think yours is going to be the same.
They do a
I
good job.
pre-ordered, so
all the reviews I've gotten, whether on Facebook or Amazon or Goodreads, I don't think anything's come in on Goodreads yet. But if you have read the book and you want to share your thoughts with other people, you can go to Amazon. I don't think you have to order through Amazon in order to record a comment, or Goodreads.
I don't think you do. Yeah.
And or even on Facebook. And I asked Karen earlier, I'm really curious what people's favorite chapters are. I'll tell you, my favorite chapter is the one about the sweetgrass baskets in South Carolina. It's really quite a story of how they parlayed the symbol of their oppression into something that they can sell for thousands of dollars in some cases.
Very cool.
Okay.
Anyone else want to weigh in on your favorite part of the book?
Yeah, if anyone wants to share a favorite, it doesn't have to be a chapter. It could just be a random fact.
I love the Winslow Homer pictures and the evidence of sea level rise in the Big Bend. I thought that was fascinating.
Yeah, and also on the St. John's as well. So yeah, that's pretty interesting. Okay, well, I want to thank you all for participating.
Thank
and,
you.
Yeah,
spread
thanks.
the word
John.
and spread the word on over pruning. It'll take a long time to get these things pruned properly, or not pruned, but it's a campaign worth pursuing.
Thanks, Wilma. If anybody wants, click on her link and she says there's a 20% off.
Oh yes, that's
book.
right. The Florida Master Gardener Volunteer Book Club has picked this as a selection, and I'm going to be joining them when everyone's read it and they have a meeting at the end of the process. So yeah, That's very exciting.
Could you repeat that? Who's doing that?
the Florida Master Gardener Volunteer Book Club.
It's in the chat, Mary.
It's in the
Okay.
chat.
You can copy it and paste it into somewhere else if you want, or you can just click the link.
And if I will, if you go to the palmettobook.blog, there's a list of other events. So hopefully I'll be, before too long, I'll be able to speak in public and sign books and do stuff like that. So
Yeah, soon we'll all be vaccinated, right?
Yeah.
hopefully.
I'm gonna put that in the book.blog. There it is. I'm gonna put it in the chat.
And so Karen, this will be available to people that weren't able to join us?
Yes, so probably sometime tomorrow, I will trim off the beginning and I'll post it up on the Serenoa YouTube page.
Fantastic. And
But
then
you can find it on our website. You can find the links.
right,
So
and
right
then
where you go for the meetings, the page where the meetings are, that will become a link to our to this meeting, and you can yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again.
All right.
Thank
All right.
you.
Yes.
Great.
Thanks,
Great to see
everyone.
everyone. All right.
Excellent, thank you.
You really only lost 3 people, so
Oh,
good job.
excellent. Okay. 27. Fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Well, I'm going to end the meeting. Good night, all.
Good
And
night.
we'll see you next time. And yeah, hopefully see you Saturday at Sweet Bay for Serenoa Day.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Bye.